I'm really delighted to open with you this new series that will target hybrid projects. Hybrid projects, they come out from the predictive way we had to do projects, that is to say, to plan everything in advance, with the combined methodology of Agile. Agile, it's more dynamic. We go with little steps. And what I'm going to do with you is to introduce you to hybrid projects. MS Project in itself can really well handle hybrid projects. This we are going to see it within different modules. And I will also take this opportunity of this new series to have you, first of all, discover Agile methodology, how we can combine them and when to choose one or the other one to work in a project. And at the same time, we are going to discover the complete ecosystem of Microsoft Project. Not only the tool, the Microsoft Project tool that we know really well, but there are other tools that are also interesting and that can be used in this context. Namely, if you have an Office 365 account, you might already have worked with Planner. Planner is intended for small teams that want to be self-organized, which means it has a tendency to go agile. And we have also Project for the Web, which is the development and the development mainstream for MS Project. There is also online server, and MS Project as we know it today is named online desktop solution. So we are going to look at those things, and in these ecosystems there are also other elements to do reporting. We can do reporting with MS Project, but more and more we see people doing reporting with Excel Power Query. So this is an aspect that I'm also going to involve and bring you the knowledges on this. And after that, there is a more powerful tool, which is the Power BI tool, where you can really do a lot for your reporting and project control and analysis. Once again, welcome to this session. I'm Christian from Vision 6D. And I'm delighted to be here with you. This session is live, so you can interact with me, and I'm just going to welcome you to the session. Say hi, say who you are, where you are from. It's always interesting to know those things, and it's something that I really appreciate. So, to go into those new aspects of project management, I'm going to use an example. That example is the development of a PTZ camera. It's a camera that pans, tilts, and zooms. You can control them remotely. It is a project on which I had the opportunity to work, and we are going to look at this project from the design steps when there was the first market analysis of that ID, going through what I just said, the design, how does it look like, what is it able to do, that PTZ camera, and after we have the development cycle. Once we are into the development cycle, that company also wanted to produce those cameras. So we had to dig into production, and we had also to define a new line of production. And after a certain time, we are planning to raise in power. And for this, we will build a second production line. That second production line needs an extension of the actual building, so there will be a part which is construction. So what we are going to look at today is really, first of all, a purely MS project aspect. That is to say, how do I go about sub-projects? Because at a moment when projects, they start to become complex, they involve different teams. At one point, it's really difficult to steer and manage everything from a single MS project file, an MPP file. So for this, MS project is giving us the possibility to work with different files. For example, today what I'm going to do with you is to look into the development stages. And we are going to see that for each development part, we can consider this as a different project. When you are talking about a camera, it's a kind of IoT, and the internal part is conceived like any IoT. It's working under Linux, and you must understand that there is a first part which is mechanical, how that device is moving, how is it built. There is a second part which is the optical part, how do we get the images, and there is a third part which is the electronic that we have inside. So within the hardware part, we have a mechanical part, an optical part, and an electronic part. And after that, or at the same time, of course, we need some intelligence into this system. So there will be a software development. So you see, it's quite complex, all that, just talking of the development phase. Before to arrive to the development phase, if I may ask you to give a look at the timeline that is behind me. You see here in that kind of orange-brown, we first started by a feasibility study. Once the feasibility study was done, we made a decision whether to go or not to go onto this project, because we got feedback as how much the investment would be, the kind of revenues we could expect, and there was the decision whether to move ahead or not with the investment. Of course, you can imagine that the feasibility study is not just a simple thing. There were many aspects that were involved into this, like analysis of competitions and competitors, positioning on the market and all that. So this was the feasibility study that was then followed by that decision that you see here symbolized by a milestone as to be a go, no-go decision. Of course, to have this being interesting, we go into this project. And you see that the first thing that we do, it's a design. How does that PTZ camera is going to look like? What does it look like? What can it do? And this is the design. And once we have an idea of what it can do, how it looks like, how it moves, for example, we've decided to enter in another marketing phase. We've entered in a marketing phase where we want to test with some selected customers or potential customer if there is really an interest for such a device. This is what we call an MVP. MVP stands for minimal viable product. With this, we created a website with drawings, animations of how the camera would be, and we looked how the customers were potentially interested. They could register. We were saying that this camera is actually in development. We've defined different types, and we defined also prices. and we look whether the customer had interest, and there were even the possibility already to subscribe ahead to get one of those cameras at the given price. With this, it was one way to get a feedback on the market and to already hear some critics and people saying and warming up there is something that is happening. With this, there was a second gate, because the reason why we did this, it was to make sure that there is really an interest in our product. At that point, we hadn't spent almost nothing into development and production, but we got the second gate where we were reassured that this was really something different and it really had a market for it. At least we were convinced of this at that moment, and we could also convince the management of this situation. So once we go through that second marketing gate, if you want the MVP gate, we could start the development. That is to say that the different development teams could start to work, and we already had also some work about the production. The production, they started because once the development is advanced enough, we can start to produce the first prototypes. So we had to start already to work on the production for several reasons. We had to prepare the production line, we had to get the material, and we also needed to be ready with the test equipment. So with that, we have as goal to be ready for shipping at some date. Here it's the 24th of August. So you see that the process from the start up to the time where we are ready to do shipping is quite long. After that, just want to move this a bit. We have a last milestone. It's the milestone where we ranged up into our production systems and we have 2 lines of production fully working together. So this is the overall of the project. This is really an interesting project, as you can understand, because there are many different aspects of project management that are involved in there. So if I come back now to the Gantt chart, and to do that, I'm going to change a bit the view you have by having me a bit smaller. Like that, you have a better overview of the planning we have currently. What you see, it's the project is named IoT PTZ. And then after what I described in the beginning with the feasibility study, the budget and all that, it's the initiation phase. So then there is the investment first decision. So you see the go, no go is a 0-day duration work. And you see that the initiation phase, we took quite a lot of time. It's about 70 days. Now we have after that 4 months of work, 2 months of work, where we work first of all on the external design. It's really how is that device done, what does it look like, and then after there is also already something about the internal design, which are the functions we need to be able to propose them now in our minimal viable solution. After that, we enter into that marketing phase again, where we do the minimal viable product. It's almost a simulation of the device. Like that, we can measure the appetite of the market for such a product and the fitness of the product to a market. That kind of devices, you know them maybe because you have some cameras at home. Some of the cameras, you can remotely guide them and they can like that orient it, pan, tilt, and zoom upon your commands. That same kind of cameras, you can also find them in television studios, in broadcasting studios. You see them following the presenter for the news, for example. And you see that kind of cameras also in some of the robots. So there are plenty of usage of that kind of PTZ cameras. I'm not going to enter with you too much into the design, but I'm going to give you some flavors, because our topic here is not to create such a device, although it's really something interesting. It's to understand the project management that goes around such a project. So you might be a beginner into MS Project. Don't worry, we don't need many knowledges for what we are doing currently here. And also we will going modules after modules, and this will allow you to discover all those other products that MS Project, that Microsoft is proposing from for its project management tools. Last year, there was a conference where they said that they are rethinking the way to do project management. And one element into project management that is central today for Microsoft and for me also is the communication between people. So don't be surprised that in the forthcoming modules, we are going to introduce Microsoft Teams, the tool that you might have used or you are currently using, and you are maybe an expert on this, how to have a lot of remote conferences. So this, we are also going to look into it, how it works, how the integration for project management is working with Teams. And one important element is Project for the Web, where of course we have all aspects of communication and also sharing data about the control, the tracking of your project. So once again, welcome to this session. I'm happy to see you. I'm saying hello to Siam from Bangladesh. Hello. It's a pleasure to have you on board. And I like when people are saying where they are from, what they do. It's always interesting. So what you see currently, I've described the beginning of the project. And now what I'm going to do, it's to head a bit more into the hardware development. You see that the hardware development here is defined as development 1, dev 2, dev 3. I haven't for the moment defined the specifics about this part. And after comes the software. Briefly, the software, we have one first part, which is to define what we are going to do. And after we work with devices at the lowest level. Those devices, they are based on Linux systems and they have web servers inside. For the IDE, we are using Nginx, and we are using Node.js for the user interface interactions. And we can interact with the camera through a web app. And of course, in some of the most advanced functions we have exchanges with the cloud between the different cameras and the cloud. So this is just a short overview of the software part. We will detail this more in further modules. So what I'm going to do now is to show you that we are going now to insert here what we need to do for the hardware part. But what I have done, instead of listing all the tasks for the mechanical part, the optical part, and the electronic, I've done and I've prepared this in separated files. So I'm going now, first of all, to show you what I entitled the sub-project for the mechanical part. That sub-project that you see here is really simple. And as well, the mechanical one as the optical one and the electronic one, I didn't enter too much into the detail. They are defined as predictive project, that is to say that everything is cascaded. Although the reality wasn't so much like that, here for the example and the understanding of the predictive methods, I use a cascaded, a predictive way to do the development. So for the three different parts, you will see exactly the same definition of a scope or definition of the requirements. What do we need from the mechanical part? Then after we do the design, it's the general aspect of this part. Then there is really the development, digging into the details that we are ready with that device. And then, of course, there is a certain phase of test. So there might be among you some engineers in mechanics. They maybe would like to know a bit more. I'm sorry, at that point we don't dig much further into this. But you are welcome if you have ideas or things or questions. I would answer as the one I'm able to answer. So with that, I'm going back into the other file. So here, what we are used to have is, in our case, what we call a master file. Because what I want, it's now to include all those tasks into that master file under development 1. To do that, first of all, let's make us well understand that this is one file, and what I just showed you is a second file. So what I'm going to do is to integrate the second file into the first one. And you are going to see that this is really simple, and I want to have this under the name device 1. So for that, I select the next line, and I'm coming up here into project, and here you see that I can define sub-projects. And my system has now opened for me a file that is here, that is defined here inside, and I have different kinds of files. So you see the master file, which is here, and you see subproject mechanical. You must also see subproject optical, which is here, and you see, of course, subproject electronic. So what I'm going to do is to insert now the subproject mechanical part. And you see that we can insert it in two ways. I could say I want to insert it read-only. Like that, from the master file, I cannot make any changes. I cannot delete tasks, and so on. Of course, that for the demo here and the usage I do, I would like to be able to modify tasks, so I'm going simply to say insert. And you see that here we have now a change. You see that on the line 15, which is here, we have a new symbol that appears. It's a symbol to show us that there is a file that is now linked to this master file. And you see, if you read down, you can see that it is the file that I was showing you, the mechanical one. With that, we see that here we have now the name of that project or sub-project. So here it's the mechanical part. I'm going to enlarge this a bit. and you see that it has its own duration. So where does that duration come from? Of course, that MS project went to get that information from that other file. If now I look on the Gantt chart, we see here on top behind me, we see that there is the duration. If now I come here ahead of this project and I'm opening, you see that I find all the tasks that I had in the other file. You find the durations, start dates and finish dates, and you find the predecessors. Now, if we are talking about those details, maybe, and I'm sure that some of you have already noticed, that the numbering is changing from the task number 15. You see that the numbering here that we have starts again from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then jumps to 16. It's that we have inserted here a sub-project, and this is the numbering coming from the sub-project. So I'm just going back to the sub-project that you can pay attention to this. You see that we don't have the name of that sub-project task, but it's in there, and you see that the numbering starts from 1 to 5. So back to the master file that I have here. So we are doing the mechanical part, and at one point here, when we had defined the scope and everything, the engineers, they said that they needed to introduce some new CAD 3D program to do the design, and they wanted to have a training on this. So I'm going here to insert a new task directly in the master file, and I'm entitling this training 3D. And the duration here is 5 days. So it means that in the project there was the need for training to a new version of the CAD software for 5 days, the Gantt software. So we see that it is inserted here, and in reality it happened at the same time as we defined the requirements. So what I'm going to do is that I need to insert this into the diagrams that we have here. So I'm going to say that the 3D training had as predecessor which task? I could say that, yeah, it could have the task number 2. So let's see what happens if I'm saying here task number 2. So with no surprise, it has now positioned the training at the same time as we start the design. Now the question is, okay, you've inserted a task into the master file. What happens in the sub-project file? So we are going to give a look at the sub-project file, which is here, and you see that the sub-project file has now been positioned as task number 3, training 3D, 5 days, starting on the 29th December. And it is linked with the task number 2. If now we have for each sub-project someone that is the project manager on this part or is playing that role. And for him it was more important to have a different coloration here. So we formatted this bar and we changed the color. Yeah, I'm going down, change the color, saying okay. No, I was wrong spot. Yeah, that's the right spot. And I wanted this to be that brown here. So we see it, the training here is defined as this brown task that we see here. So this is a change that I've done now in the SubProject file. So let's go into the master file and look what happened. And here in the master file, if I take the tasks training 3D and I'm going onto the Gantt chart, it is still in blue. So this is a small detail, but it is important because it shows that although we integrate the subproject into the master file, there are some autonomy in each of the files. Certain things, they are not transferred because this is the way the project manager for the subproject intends to manage it, and this is maybe not the way the general project manager of the program wants to see it. So we have this, and if I'm going back now once again to the subproject file, there is maybe also one thing that you've noticed. It's that we don't have anything here in the timeline. Nothing. Really nothing here in the timeline. So let's admit that this project manager, when he reports, he wants to have that training into his timeline. And I'm going to color it also the same way, like that we have a certain unity and we see of what we are talking about. And you see now that, well, we have those expressions here, we have the timeline, and we are going to give a look at the master file timeline. And we don't see here any training positioned or anything. So it really means that your two timelines, they are absolutely independent. So this is also an illustration of something that can be of interest to you. It means that, for example, the general flow of the project, what is represented by the master file, you can maybe use it here with all the stakeholders. And the details of how this part of the project is handled, it's maybe more with the team dealing with the mechanical part. This is one way, one approach. There might be others, but it's worth having an idea. You see the use of the sub-projects. So now I'm going into the master sub-project. I'm making this become a bit smaller here, and I'm going to start to insert the optical sub-project. So once again, I selected the line after where I want to do the insertion, and I'm going to choose here the optical sub-project. So this sub-project is defined exactly like the mechanical one. So if I open here up, if my mouse wants to work with me, we see that we have two sub-projects having absolutely the same kind of behavior. Of course, the reality wasn't so simple, but this is to show you one part here. So what we noticed, it's that now into the sub-project optical part, during the tests here, we did some tests on the focus. We wanted to make sure certain things on the focus. So for that, I'm just going to ident it. And this test was during 4 weeks. So I'm again bringing those 4 weeks here inside. And you see now I've added a task into the sub-project, and I'm going to have a look into the master project. And you see here into the master project that we have the same. So going back, this project also had some planned tests on material. and this was also going to last 4 weeks. So you can imagine that those 2 tests we see here, we find them in the master file. Let's check it, we never know, but this is the case. So what I want now to show you, it's that test of the material. Once we advanced a bit into the project, we understood that it wasn't necessary anymore. So for that, what I did, it's that I decided to inactivate the task. You see? So it's grayed out and it's marked as not necessary anymore. And you see that even into the Gantt chart, it's grayed out. So now if I go, because we need always to go and to check what happens into the subproject files, we see that it is removed from there. Okay? So we've seen that, so we see that those things can be done like that. And now what I'm going to do, it's that in the end it wasn't necessary at all, so we decided to remove that line. So I can either do it from here or do it from the master file. So I'm going to do it from here, like that you see it. So I'm going to delete the task. So from the sub project, it is deleted now. And now I'm going back into the master project. And you see that we don't have anymore the test on the material. So with that, we've done those part. We've seen that we are independent into the 2 timelines and files. And now I'm going to add the 3rd part, which is the electronic part. So for that, I'm again choosing the task that comes after, and I'm going again into project to add my sub-project here. So the sub-project that I'm going to add is the electronic one. So you see that we've added a task positioned at position 19. If now I open this project, it's the electronic project. With that, we have now the 3 different projects here defined: the mechanical one, the optical one, and the electronic one, and each is defined in a different or separate file. So you've seen that you can add things. You can either add them directly from the master or directly into the sub-project. You can delete the tasks from the master, or you can delete them from the sub-project. So those things, they are working together, and this is the base on which we are in the further modules going to build that project and look how to build it with the different tools. So as a project manager, you are advancing in everything here, and there might be a moment where you might say, okay, device 2, I know the optical development, there wasn't much to be done. I think I don't need to have this represented anymore into the master file. I can simply, I would like to have this removed like that. It's simpler for me. So what I'm going to do, I'm going here to select the task 17 here, you see it, and I'm going to say remove all what is underneath this task. So this is like you do it for any task, and the question is, what is really happening with that sub-project? So I'm right-clicking here, you see, and I'm doing a delete task. And I'm deleting the task. And you see, it says to me that to continue this, it's going to delete IOPTZ subproject optical and its subtasks. So is it really what you want to do? Have a doubt? Not sure? Not sure so far? Let's say okay, and let's see what happens. So I'm saying okay, and you see that beneath development 2, everything disappeared. So I know the question you have, it's what happened with the file. Development 2 is the optical part, and you see that we still have it here into the file. So it means that sub-projects, they are really something interesting because they allow you to cut in different parts your project. You have a certain independence on those different files, and whenever you want, you can bring them into the master file. You can also, like here, you see the optical development part. We have a timeline that is specific to this part. I will enlarge it a bit that you can see. So we have it here according to what the project manager of this part or the team leader wanted to show us, or what it's used for. So once again, now we have those possibilities to add whenever we want sub-projects. So for me, it's an important point for you to know that this exists, try it, practice it, and of course that those files, they are available to you on our website vision6d.com/download. Look for the IoT PTZ project files. I'm Christian from Vision 6D, and for me it's a pleasure to share those knowledges I have. I really appreciate your comments, and I always try to give answers to them. There are no silly questions. The silliness is in not asking. And subscribe, share those files and experience and videos with your friends. All this will be online, and you will have it in French and in English. The next module, we will look into how we deal with the software part, and we are going to start to dig into Agile methodology. Once again, thank you. It's Christian from Vision 6D. Have a great time. See you soon in the next module. Bye-bye.